Hey guys, Micah from blackbearcustomkydex. Today we're going to talk about a sheath that I built for Tops Operator 7 and a Tops Street Scalpel. This is the Street Scalpel 1, not the 2. I think I like the 2 just a little bit more, but both are excellent knives. Tops, of course, fantastic company. So both these are Tops knives and I love them. Now, before I get into actually showing you the test fit and all that, I wanted to explain this. This is a little bit weird, but basically, most of the time when I have a knife that requires a lot of prep work, as the Operator 7 does, I try to buy 2 of those knives so that I have one that I can prep and just leave it prepped all the time. And that's the knife that I'll actually use to press the sheaths, and then I can test fit with the unprepped knife, or if I ever want to use that knife, I can just use the unprepped one and you know, business as usual. So it's advantageous for a sheath maker to have a second one of just about any given knife, especially if it's very time consuming to prep. So just to give you a quick idea of the things that need to be prepped on this, there are some pretty odd shaped fullers. They're odd in the sense that they're very square at the bottom, so they're hard to fill. So I needed to stuff clay in the fullers. I needed to stuff clay. There's some milled slots on the guards. You can kind of see the outline of those. There you go. There's better lighting there. So I stuffed clay in both of those, and then I basically dipped the knife down into a container of silicone and let it sit there until the silicone hardened. I only dipped it up to about here on the handle, and if you guys are familiar with mold making using silicone to create a negative and then pouring resin or epoxy or something like that in to fill in and recreate the item, what you need to do is create what's called a sprue, and that's basically a second air channel. You have one hole where you pour your material in, the resin, the epoxy, whatever it is, and then you have a second one that exists just to allow the displaced air to escape the negative cavern inside that silicone. So instead of trying to come up with some kind of sprue situation, I basically just made a really wide hole. You can see obviously it's like a 1-inch square. That's plenty big. You don't even need a sprue. So I poured in a very quick curing resin called a Lumarez. It takes about 30 minutes to cure. So yeah, I just created this. It is for sure pretty flexible, so it's not and it weighs maybe a quarter what the knife weighs. So it's definitely not a perfect representation of the knife, but the sizing is perfect. So I'm really stoked about this. It's nice to have a second one of these finally, because it takes about 45 to 60 minutes for me to prep one of these Operator 7s. So I have to add that to the build time every single time I do that, and it's just good to not have to do that anymore. So in any case, this is the first time I've ever done it with this knife, but I now have a resin copy of my Operator 7, and I can use that to verify the fit. So here we go. Really nice click in. There's no rattle, no play, and ballistic one-handed draw. This is very comfortable. So my client Tim had to send me his Street Scalpel. He also sent me this sling. I don't know what the brand is on this sling, but I really like it. It's very meaty. It's I want to say there's 4, maybe 6 strands of paracord. Oh, it's 4. It's 4. 4 strands of paracord running through the length of this, and then a cobra knot tied around it, obviously in OD green and black, which look really, really nice against this black basket weave that I've got on the Operator 7, and some True Hide whiskey. Which is the True Hide is the pattern. It's a nice leather textured pattern, and whiskey is the color option, obviously a brown. I love this combination of colors that we're seeing here, so I'm super pleased with how that came out. Just a couple quick details. The only carry setup here is this sling, and it has some traditional swivel lugs on it, or swivel clips I should say. So how you manipulate these, you can unscrew them, and then it's a spring-loaded feature that you actually push through, and you have to swivel that out of the way, and then you can remove from the D-ring. So that actually works really nicely. I'm pleased with that. I chose the D-ring over getting some actual proper swivel lugs. Proper swivel lugs would, any of the ones I found anyway, have attachment for key mod or M-lock, like traditional rifle handguard features. So it's difficult, I think, to come up with a clean way of mounting that to Kydex, because there's going to be a really severe offset. Basically, I'd have to mount it sideways to get the eyelets, right, to attach to the eyelets, but then you're going to have a standoff of something like a ½ inch before the swivel point can even connect. So instead of having the connection be more or less directly above the sheath, it would actually be offset by at least a ½ inch farther than what it is right now, and that's just going to cause the sheath, when these angles average out against your side, it's going to cause them to tilt even more. And having the knife closer to your body is just more comfortable. It's also more practical and safer because you're less likely to get it snagged on anything. It's not that that's like super dangerous, but obviously it's inconvenient, and we just want to avoid any of that kind of nonsense if at all possible. So yeah, this all came out really, really nicely. Now, he also asked for a secondary carry setup, well, actually a primary carry setup for the street scalpel when it's not riding on the Operator 7. Currently, it is a fixed piggyback, meaning you have to actually use tools to remove them and separate them. The only tool necessary on any of my setups to separate your sheaths is a Phillips head screwdriver. I'd recommend using a drill gun just because it's faster, but the sheath is only actually attached through these 2 points right there. It's plenty strong, it's really rigid, and when you get in there, Tim, to take it apart, you'll notice that I used a shorter rubber spacer here than the one right here. And the reason is because it allows the handle to be off at a slight angle, giving you just a little bit more fingertip to grip that handle with. It's already not a very, there's not a lot of contour to grip onto for this, so you really just need to use pinch strength to securely hold that. So having a little bit more of it to grab is, in my opinion, quite necessary. Now, again, where this knife doesn't have a ton of contour, all the retention is kind of coming in this area along the bottom of the handle. So it is secure, but you're not going to get quite the same click as you would with like this, where it's got a very aggressive contour that it can snap into. You can even see the Kydex molded in behind the handle, but then flared open again. So I usually try to go for that kind of hourglass figure, and the center of that hourglass is actually the retention point of the sheath. So you cannot really do that with this knife. With this one, I just kind of stuck a piece of wood to the bottom of the knife that follows the contour of it, basically like this, and I just taped that in place and then pressed the sheath around it. So obviously tape on the blade and all that as well to make sure that there's space. That's another thing, guys. I get a lot of questions. I'm going to sidebar for just a second, but I get a lot of questions or requests for an interior lining like felt or suede, and I know that there are a few companies that do that for their knives, a few knife makers that will make all their sheaths with suede or felt or some kind of interior lining on the sheaths. I'm not going to tell you that it's a bad idea or a good idea or worse or better or anything like that. I just want to present the facts to you really quick on that because it is such a common question and a common misconception, in my opinion. The misconception is that Kydex is a hard material, and having a hard material against your blade can cause scratching. This is absolutely true, and it becomes exponentially more true and more likely if your blade is dirty when you put it in the sheath, particularly if there is visible three-dimensional grit or wood or any kind of pebbles or dirt, things like that stuck on it. You're just going to be wedging this knife in between two layers of plastic that are just pinching those things against and scraping it. It's going to scrape your knife up. If that's not a big deal to you, hey, more power to you. However, the best way to avoid that as a Kydex maker is to put several layers of tape on both sides of the blade so that when the Kydex cools off, it actually is wider than the blade, and so you wind up with a generous channel to insert that knife into. You can kind of see how I'm holding my fingers. There's room on both sides. Now, obviously, that's not the exact spacing. I don't really know what is, but you can tell the Kydex is not holding the knife blade at all. The blade essentially makes zero contact with the inside of the sheath. It's really all in the handle. So that's ideally the case. Now, with the suede or the felt, a lot of the times you'll find that those are actually snug on the blade, And what that does is it causes the same thing. It's just material rubbing up against your blade. Now, what do you think the case is going to be? If you have dirt, grit, whatever on your knife, you stick that in there. The felt itself obviously is not going to do any damage, and it has a little bit of give, so maybe it won't scuff your blade up on that first insertion or first draw. But that grit is most likely going to get hung up in the fibers of the suede or the felt, and it's going to remain in there. Eventually, as you're drawing that in and out, it's going to start digging a big deep scratch in the side of your blade, and obviously you're going to accumulate more and more of it over time. Now with Kydex, you can just take a little bit of a pressure washer or even compressed air, something like that, and you can spray that debris out of there. With felt or suede, you might be able to get some of it out, but most of it's probably going to stay hung up inside there, stuck in the fibers. So you're very unlikely to be able to clean that out. Now you can also do the tape trick and then still put an interior liner in there, have a little extra space, and maybe that's what you want to do. But my recommendation is not to do that, because the fibers of these materials are absorbent, so you're going to wind up with odors, you're going to wind up trapping a lot of extra moisture, you're going to wind up trapping rocks and debris and things like that in there. I shouldn't say rocks, but you know, pieces of dirt, small pebbles maybe, things like that. So all in all, my personal input on this, my feeling is that you should not have an interior liner, because there are ways to avoid that scratching without it. It's very costly to put that in there because it's extremely time consuming and difficult, or at least to do it correctly, in my opinion, the way I would do it anyway. And it doesn't really offer any benefits as far as I can tell. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. But anyway, so when you separate, we'll get back to this, when you separate the Street Scalpel sheath from the Operator 7 sheath, you have an UltiClip as the carry setup. Now the UltiClip currently is attached to this little floated plate that I've got mounted to the face of the sheath. However, you can take that plate off and you can mount the UltiClip to any of the eyelets on the sheath itself. You can see that the eyelets on the plate match the eyelets on the sheath. So you obviously can just go through one of the side eyelets. It is an ambidextrous plate. You can shuffle it to the other side and it'll fit perfectly. But my primary way to carry it would be through this slot. I've milled a slot basically 3 inches long. It goes the full length of the plate, and it is in line with the handle of the knife. So you can keep that UltiClip centered. You can also adjust the height, the angle, all that good stuff. There you go. You can see the full slot there. It's really clean, and just gives you a lot of different options. Now, if you do want to lock this straight in line, I'm providing a second set of hardware, the exact same thing that's embedded there, so you can obviously install that. I would personally just go with the single point of attachment because it does allow for quick adjustment on the fly. You might need to just loosen this up with a Phillips head, and then you can slide the UltiClip up and down that slot to get the desired depth riding in the pocket or in the waistband, whatever you decide to do. So, all right guys, that is all I've got for you. I'm sorry to ramble, I'm sorry to go off on that sidebar, but I thought it was a really important thing to just kind of mention. I want to maybe make a couple informative videos about different things like that, common questions or requests, or just misinformation I hear a lot of. So maybe I'll do that sometime in the near future. But all right guys, let me know what you think of these two knives. Let me know what you think of the resin mold that I made. Do you think that's a good idea? Do you like how it came out? I think it came out really nice. I'm pleased with it. Let me know what you think of this setup here that Tim requested. I really like it. This is pretty much what I would go with for any combination of large and small blade for myself. I'm not a big fan of danglers. I like drop leg setup quite a bit, which is a dangler that's got a leg strap. I just like having that knife move with my leg and not be able to flop independently. But baldric carry is by far my favorite camping woodsman kind of setup to go out with, because it's just so easy to take on and off. It can be worn with a pack, without a pack, with a belt, without a belt. It doesn't require anything except your body to hang it on, and that's the primary advantage in my opinion. So, okay guys, let me know what you think, and of course, like, share, comment, subscribe, and share this video out to all your buddies. I think I already said share, so forgive my harebrainness here, guys. I'm struggling. All right, guys, if you like this video, hit that like button. If you like the channel, subscribe, comment down below, share this out to all your friends, and of course, stick around for the next one. Thanks for tuning in, guys. God bless.